and we're here on a permanency review. And is the department ready?
Departments present and ready. I have Yolanda Novak, permanency specialist with St. Francis, to be as the covering supervisor.
Very good. And Jerry, as the ad litem, are you ready?
Ready, Your Honor.
And it's my understanding, Megan, the parental rights have already been terminated, so we don't have the parents involved anymore.
That's correct, Judge.
Okay, very good. Well, let's go ahead and proceed. And we're just going to kind of get an update.
Yes, and unfortunately, there definitely have been developments since the last hearing. I guess you could debate whether they're good or not, but I'll let Ms. Novak update the court.
Okay, very good. Yolanda, go ahead and give us an update, please.
Yes, sir. So the children were in an adoptive placement. That adoptive placement over the summer decided not to adopt and gave us 3 days notice to come pick them up. We were able to place them back in a previous foster home that they had already been in. So they knew the kids and were able to have all three together again. They are currently doing well in placement. They're still adjusting. They've had just they've just been through so much. Jalissa is having some medical things going on. William is having some normal teenage behaviors at school, and Nevaeh seems to be doing well, other than normal behaviors at home sometimes. But the kids are doing well in current placement. We are working with current placement to see if they are willing to adopt. If they are, we will move forward with that. If not, we ask them to give us to let us know by my December visit, and then that way we can move forward. If they are not, then we can look at other options for the children, sir.
Back when this placement was, how long ago were they placed in this home before?
I'm sorry, the case was passed over to me. I believe they were with the adoptive parents for almost 2 years, I think. That may be incorrect, but it was almost finalized, and that family was in Colorado. We had an ICPC placement on them in Colorado, and then we asked the family, like, they were almost adopted, and that family decided to move back to Texas. So they had to restart certification to be able to adopt in Texas. And the family just got really frustrated with the process, and then they just decided they didn't want to. But
Okay.
previously, I'm not sure how long they were in the current placement before the adoptive home.
If I'm remembering correctly, Judge and Mr. Morales, I have had this case and then on and off since about 2018. I believe they were with this foster home while parental rights were still intact. There was a period of time where parental rights were still intact during PNC. And I think that, if I'm remembering correctly, the placement that they were moved to that was going to be adopted was a placement that knew the children through that foster home. And so
Yes,
there was a connection there.
sorry. It was their caseworker that met the children in that foster home. They built a bond. I guess she ended up not being a caseworker, so she decided to adopt.
Wow.
And then they moved to Colorado.
Jerry, what's your recollection?
Yeah, Your Honor, that's correct. I think they were closer in this placement, closer to 3 years, I believe, prior to going to Colorado. You know, these kids, Judge, it was just a really unfortunate deal. We had so many moving parts during the hearing. The dad was in New Mexico. Mom, I think, had made a move either to New Mexico or Colorado, and it did end up getting extended. And towards the end of the extension is when COVID hit. So then it got extended even further. And it was just, I don't know. I kind of feel like I felt in this one. We've all felt it in a little bit. These kids had almost no permanency. It was really disappointing when the adoptive parents decided to back out, because they were actually wavering even before they decided to move back to Texas. And there was several meetings we had to have, and trying to, we didn't want to force them to do anything, but trying to convince them to stick with it. for these kids' permanency, because I mean, this is a case that's just gone on and on and on and on. And they were in Pampa for a long time. And yeah, we thought because there was a previous relationship that this adoptive placement was going to be a lot more hopeful for long term. And then, when they decided it wasn't for them, it was really unfortunate for the kids. And so now I am very thankful for their placement in Pampa, because, that at least they're used to her, and they've had that bond, and they were here with her for a few years. I'm again, don't want to force anybody's hand, but it would be a really good blessing, I think, for these kids if it did end up in adoption there. I just, these kids really deserve some permanency, and they haven't had it in 6 years.
Yeah. I looked. Nevaeh has been in care for over half of her life.
Jerry, have you had any contact recently with the kids?
I haven't actually seen them other than just the phone calls and really checking in with the ad litem. I need to go back up to Pampa. I haven't been to Pampa, I guess, since they moved back. And then, of course, in Colorado, I wasn't in Colorado. But, I mean, I saw their house in Pampa, the first time. And, they were really adjusted, and they loved it there. And so I'm hopeful that maybe that can be permanent for them.
Yolanda, back to Jaleesa for a minute. I know I noted she had some seizure activity. Have they ever been able to pinpoint what they think is causing that?
They are not neurological. They are stress-induced seizures, and she's had them mostly at school. She just feels safer at home. So like the anxiety can bring an onset of them. And she does have an appointment in December with a psychiatrist to see if there's anything further with the psychiatrist that they can recommend to do. She is on medication for them, but she is still having them.
Okay. So right now, I guess our plan is to leave them where they are, find that the placement is appropriate and in their best interest, and with a goal towards adoption with this current placement.
Yes, sir. If the family is willing, that's our hope, is that they've talked about adopting. They just haven't given us a set answer, and they've kind of been, we're not sure. So we're waiting on them and we want to wrap them around with some services and just see what else we can support them with, to see if that would help them. I know foster mom was a little concerned about the kids losing services, and so I'm not sure she quite understands that they will continue to have support and services after the adoption. So I'm getting with a team member with St. Francis to see what else we can do to help them be more stable and feel more like they're stable if they go forward with adoption.
Okay. And Jerry, in terms of that being the current plan, are you in agreement and feel like that's in the children's best interest?
Yes, Judge. The one thing that the kids have always had is each other. There was, during the hearing, is that, during the actual case, there was talks about, because they're not full siblings. And so there was talks about maybe splitting them up. And the kids were always adamant that, no, we want to be together. And so that's been one positive. But, I hate seeing the things like with the anxiety and stuff, because, I think a lot of that might be because of the lack of permanency and things that they've gone through and being shuffled back and forth. And, but yeah, I think that's the best we can do for now. And again, I hate how it still sounds uncertain. Maybe I can get over there and, I don't know, grease some doors or something. I don't know. Maybe we can, really encourage them to do this adoption for these kids. I mean, they really deserve it.
Okay. Megan, anything else on behalf of the department?
No, Judge.
Okay. Well, based upon that evidence and testimony and update, I have reviewed the permanency report. I will continue to name the department as the permanent managing conservator, find that their placement is appropriate and should be continued and is in the children's best interest. I believe we've got a hearing set in May 23rd at 9 a.m. To review. And hopefully in the meantime, we'll get some good news from the placement parents that they're ready to adopt. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Judge. That was my only case.
Review. Okay. Is the department ready?
All right. Thank you, Judge.
Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, Daniel Trout representing. Jennifer Mays is my permanency specialist. We're present ready.
Very good. And the court has previously appointed Ms. Sapien as the ad litem. And Bailey, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Very good. And I've read the permanency report, but I know Jennifer's here to give us an update. Jennifer, if you would, please just kind of update us on Cameron's progress.
Okay. Cameron has made a lot of great positive progress. She's actually had an interview on Monday with Amarillo Children's Home to be into their program as far as for independent living. She is currently going over some of the policies and rules for that, and hopefully we can get her in there within a week or two because she's ready to be discharged from the QRTP. She's up to date in all her medical. She's looking to graduate in May of 2024. She's on target with all her schoolwork. Her grades are fairly well, and she's on point. She's doing really, really good.
What do you attribute her kind of? I noticed you used the word she'd done a 180. What has changed, do you think?
I think that after having the support team that she has, they really have helped her excel in a lot of helped her emotionally, physically, and everything. And I think that she's just super excited to be able to be in a less restrictive placement and to have her supportive team, walk with her through and guide her through her independent living. So she's looking forward to it. So
I noticed, I don't have any familiarity or history with the case, but the dad has, at least it looks like, tried with regard to some services and things, but is she still adamant that she doesn't have any desire to reconnect with him?
That is correct. She does not want to have any contact with him. However, she is having phone calls, and we have tried to set up virtual visits with her half brother, Connor, and we also have set up phone calls with her aunt. So she was looking forward to try to go to Houston or San Antonio, but as of right now, she's happy to be coming to Amarillo in a less restrictive placement so that she can move forward before she turns 18. So,
and I know at one time she was kind of hopeful she might get placed with that older brother, but now the plan is just for her to continue in her independent living situation until she ages out.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Bailey, have you had any contact with Cameron lately?
I have not, Your Honor. I tried to call the QRTP and the phones were not working correctly. I talked to Miss Simpson yesterday. She told me that Cameron had already been moved to Amarillo Children's Home. I don't know if that's what's actually happened or not, Jennifer. So I called Amarillo Children's Home, and then I called another worker. I'm trying to find her. Was not able to contact her this week, but she is on my radar. And from the people I was able to speak with, she's doing really well, and they echo what Miss Mays just said. That she's really done a 180. She's showing her face. Her interview went really, really well on Monday. So I don't have any concerns. I just would like to talk to my client. So if someone has a good phone number for her, if you would email it to me, I would appreciate it.
And I assume then you have absolutely no qualms about the change in placement, feel like that's in her best interest?
Correct.
Okay. Jennifer, I did notice you had some questions. I know you haven't had this case the whole time about whether or not Cameron had all her paperwork, like her Social Security card and that kind of thing. Were you able ever to confirm whether or not she in fact had all of that?
Yeah, I did locate her birth certificate. However, I was not able to get her Social Security yet. I'm in the process of working on that because we wanted to try to get her ID so that she can get a job because she's wanting to work and start moving forward, like I said. So
I don't guess she's ever had a driver's license.
No, not yet.
Is that anything that they work with them at the home on? Do they have a vehicle available for them to practice, or?
As from my understanding, the program starts in steps. So the first step will be where they teach her how to do applications and how to independently live. And then depending on the phase levels, then they start teaching them, the program will start teaching them how to drive and teaching them, to work and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a really good program. Amarillo Children's Home is a really good placement.
And I'm ashamed to say I'm not that familiar with that facility. Do the kids live in their own apartment type thing, or is it group living? How's that set up?
It's a group living. Yes.
Okay. So they have roommates.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Daniel, anything else on behalf of the department?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Bailey, anything else you'd like to inform the court of?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, well, based upon that update and my review of the permanency report, I do find that this change in placement is appropriate and a wonderful development for Cameron. And I will continue to name the department as her permanent managing conservator, approve this change of placement in order that it be continued and that we have another review in 6 months. And it looks like we've got that set for the 23rd at 9 a.m. So that great news. I read through all these reports yesterday for today's hearings, and when we're dealing with these older children, so often we just don't have the best news. So this was one shining star in the group. So I'm glad that Cameron's really turned things around, and I'm real hopeful and for her and proud of her. You're on a permanency. All right. Well, thanks, you. And is the department ready?
Yes, sir. Department is ready. Shake hands as my permanency specialist today.
And the court's previously appointed Ms. Zavala as the ad litem. And Stacy, are you ready?
I am, Your Honor.
It looks like, Daniel, and just looking at the previous filings, at one point, Jeff Hill represented the mom, but then there was a final order and he was dismissed. Yes. I note in the most recent permanency report, one of the future things the department is seeking to do is maybe terminate mom. Do I need to reappoint Jeff at this point?
No, sir. And Your Honor, that is, we're not going through with that. That I was on address that today. Okay. That is something, the child right now is on runaway. There's no benefit to that right now. And I would have to file a modification before we did that. So okay. We're not at that point just yet.
Very good. Well, I won't worry about that then.
Yes,
sir. And Shay's going to give us an update.
Yes, sir.
Shay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I've been in contact with Anaya on Instagram. I have an address and everything for her, but I'm having a hard time with Dallas PD right now. So I know where she goes and all that, but we'll see if we can get a hold of her, So
I guess there's some concern because she does take some medications that we'd like for her to be on, and any indication, I don't guess she's currently medically compliant.
And no, she's not. And there's concerns of, trafficking and drug use. So.
Okay. And I know there's a history of running away where this has happened before. Is that typically the pattern? Does she get hooked up with an older guy or?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I was wanting to see if we could get her placed with her brother just temporarily. I know he doesn't have the space, but he would be happy to bring her, into his home. I just want to get her safe.
Have we done any kind of study on him in the past?
He's only got a 1-bedroom, so that's the issue.
Okay.
And she's 16.
Otherwise, we feel like he's qualified.
Yes, sir.
Well, space is nice, but I'm with you. If it was a stable, safe environment for her, that seems like a worthwhile thing to try.
Okay. I was just going to see if we could look into that. I didn't know if I needed your approval for all of that. So
do you have to do something formal, like do some kind of formal home study on him in order to do that?
Yes. And I know the space will be an issue, but maybe we could work around that just to get her safe at this point.
Stacy, you want to weigh in on that? How do you feel about that?
I am all for evaluating brother. I've met him before just in passing. I know he's been a support for her. And I would think if we do the home study and it doesn't pass because of space, that's something we can address by setting a hearing, and as long as everything else looks okay. So it seems to me we should go ahead and start a home study and take a look at it. And then if it can't pass, we can evaluate it for, I can set it for hearing and we can see.
Okay. Daniel, any objection on your behalf?
No, sir. I can get a order for a home study filed with the court.
Okay. Stacy, anything else you'd like to update the court on? Have you had any contact with the young lady?
No, not since she's been on Runaway. We had regular visits before. I feel pretty confident she's probably not taking those meds. That wasn't a favorite of hers. And I'm sure she's out of any that she would have had at this point. But my hope is possibly if we can communicate with her that brother's an option, maybe she'll resurface for us. So I don't know, but I haven't had any recent contact with her.
Shay, I know here through my drug court, we have a great organization, and I'm old and I can't remember the name, but they work with women that are involved in the sex trade. And I can't remember the name of the group, but I assume Dallas has something like that. I wonder if we could reach out to them if we feel like she's being trafficked. Sometimes they have some good credibility with ladies that are involved in that.
I will ask the SI that's down there to see if he knows of what we can use. I have actually an email thread. I'm waiting on an update to see if anybody, because I have Dallas PD on there. I believe Stacy's on there. Okay. I mean, Daniel, if you want to be on there, you can, but it's a lot of stuff. So, yeah.
So, have you looked on some of the websites like, I don't know, Backpages doesn't exist, I guess, anymore, but some of those where people advertise to see if she's showing up on any of that?
I know, like, from her Instagram, when she's at certain train stations, I think I'm just going to have to call down there to those train stations and let them know she's there. Okay. But I can't watch the Instagram stories 24 hours a day. No. I mean, she posts where she's at, and that's where it's frustrating. Yeah. But I have asked her about brother, and she said she would try to, talk to him. She gave me his new number. So I think she does trust me, to a point, but I'm afraid that it's walking on eggshells with her. So we'll see.
Well, I understand you don't want her to completely disappear. I mean, some contact is sure better than none at all. And knowing she's alive and, that kind of thing is important. So I sure wouldn't try to encourage you to break that trust with her. But I will go ahead and order then that home study be started on the brother. Is he local here?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Okay. What is his name?
Devontae, and I can email you his other information. Daniel,
I just need his name to put it.
Okay.
I mean, it occurs to me we'd all love to live in a 10,000 square foot, 5-bedroom, 5-bath house, but I mean, that's not always possible. And we certainly had grandparents that shared a bedroom with 10 siblings. So if they're a little cramped, I'd sure much rather her be there than out on the streets.
Yes. And maybe me and Stacy could talk to her, if she's locally.
Yeah.
Local. So.
And Shay, if he took her in, would there be some resources available to him to where he might be able to use those resources to get a bigger place?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, let's pursue that and let you continue to keep that trust with her and hopefully maybe get her back here where she's safe.
Yes, I'll reach out to her today and let her know that, we'll be looking at her brother for an option and hopefully we'll get something back.
Yeah, and maybe that'll give her some solace and some comfort in coming back home and knowing she's got something to look forward to.
Yes, and her grandmother's here. So, and her mom's here as well. So.
If she did appear back on an emergency basis, where would we try to house her? Is there some kind of respite or short-term place we can place her?
They usually go to a step bed, but Tippy, do you know if we could have her go to brother temporarily, or do we have to have exceptions for that?
No, we'll have to staff it and get approval from Micah for an unauthorized placement. But we're typically very lenient with those as long as he doesn't have any disqualifying criminal, like he's not a murderer or anything like that, or involved in sex trade. Usually we can get those approved. It takes probably a day because you're going to have to run all the criminal backgrounds and everything. and FPS background.
Yes, I believe I have that from the last time. I just know she's going to run from a stepbed. So.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we'll stay on that, and in the meantime, I do find that it's appropriate to continue the department as her permanent managing conservator. We'll put the termination on the back burner while we address this more immediate concern, and hopefully we'll get her back on track. This was originally scheduled as a permanency review, but in the interim, we've had a intervener file a motion for permission to intervene, and also a motion for immediate return of the child. I know Judge Baker set those additional matters on today's docket. And so with that, is the department ready?
Daniel Travel, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. We're present.
And I don't know who that was. Bill, can you hear us?
I can hear fine, Judge.
Okay. And are you ready on behalf of the interveners?
The interveners are ready, Your Honor.
Very good. And the court has previously appointed Stacy Zavala as the ad litem. And Stacy, are you ready?
I am, Your Honor.
Daniel, tell me I wasn't able quite to ascertain from the permanency report. Have the parents been terminated?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We had an unknown father, I guess, that didn't register, and so that was terminated. And then, is it my understanding the mom voluntarily relinquished?
Yes, sir. She was terminated by relinquishment.
Okay. So as far as we know, we've got everybody present that's entitled to notice of this hearing.
Yes, sir.
Just from a legal standpoint, does the department have any objection to the intervention?
Well, Your Honor, as far as intervention not being timely, there's already been a final order put in this case before the intervention was filed. So we would object on that ground to the intervention.
Bill, you want to address that?
Yes, Your Honor, and I might extrapolate just a little bit on our motion. In addition to the motion for an immediate return and for leave to intervene, we also included in that leave to intervene request a request that the department be dismissed from this case and that the Shooks be named sole managing conservators. So there's a little bit more to it, maybe not a lot, but it just depends. But we're ready to put on witnesses regarding the leave should you wish us to do so.
And I apologize. You guys know I don't handle a lot of this and only recently have started handling it. So I've certainly never had this issue arise. So Daniel, you might, if you don't mind, just kind of flesh out maybe your objection a little bit for me. Is there a statute I could look at or some case law I could look at with regard
well,
to
just under civil procedure rules, Your Honor, parties are at liberty to intervene up until a final hearing or final order is in place, and a final order has been put in place in this is what I was meaning on that. As far as Mr. Bill's ability to intervene into the case as far as standing, the children were placed in their home for the required amount of time and haven't been out of the home long enough to defeat that purpose. So as far as standing, he would have it. My only objection would be that their final order has been in place in this hearing. So he would be not timely as far as filing.
Bill, anything further you can offer me with regard to that legal issue?
Well, Your Honor, it's our position that they are stopped from bringing that issue, that objection, for several reasons. One reason was that the Shooks originally came to me because it was alleged by the department that they abused a different child that the department placed in their home. All right. A little boy that was born to some parents who pled guilty to the offense that they were indicted for. And what's happened?
I would object to getting into facts that we're not into yet.
Well, I guess my concern is we say there's a quote unquote final order, but there doesn't seem to have been any finality because this case is still proceeding. So maybe that's just my ignorance and failure to understand what in fact a final order is. But I mean, the department still is involved with these children. The children were placed in this foster home. It seems a little odd to me that the court wouldn't have jurisdiction to make further determinations with regard to the best interest of the child.
Well, I think the court does. In fact, these children were placed with these people since birth. They're the only people they've ever known. And as a result of a totally different incident, they've been removed. And my clients relied upon the representations of the department that they were going to be allowed to adopt these two children, one of which, in all honesty, Your Honor, we only have jurisdiction time days on Janian. The other one lacks a few weeks till they've have her a year. But Janian is within the range that Daniel stated that we've made. And I believe they're a stop to bring the final order based upon the reliance of my clients' representations of the department. They chose not to intervene based upon the representation of the department. And therefore, they shouldn't be able to use that after the fact against them when they've relied on it. And the children are still out floating in the system. And I think the court, this is a very, very unusual but a very convoluted case that involves a lot of people. And I think that these children deserve to have this situation heard by a judge so that what can happen in the best interest of the children can be done.
Okay, well, I tend to agree with Mr. Hamper's reasoning, and I may be incorrect about that, but I'll overrule the objection of the department, and we'll go ahead and proceed with a hearing on the leave to intervene and the motion for immediate return. Let me just say we may be looking at some time issues. I think we're going to have time today to finish this up, but it may be that we need to stop at some point for the lunch hour, and then there is a hearing at 1 on a matter that I think should not take long to resolve. So if we do break for lunch, probably what I'll have everybody do on this case is come back about 1:30 p.m. this afternoon if we don't finish before the lunch hour. So with that, Bill, you can call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd call Cheryl Shook.
All right.
Yeah.
I apologize. I just got a message from Melinda that Daniel's computer just froze up and he's going to have to start over.
Okay. He's been having some problems today, so let's wait on him to get back on.
Your Honor, if I may, my name is Richard Munoz. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for Buckner Children and Family Services. We're the child placing agency that currently has the children, and some of our employees were subpoenaed to testify, but I just wanted to make an announcement that we're here as well.
Okay, great, Richard. I appreciate that. I assumed you were a lawyer looking at your bookshelves behind you, and I should have asked you for an announcement, and I apologize. Daniel, while you were gone, Richard Munoz, who's an attorney in Dallas, made an announcement that he's here with some witnesses that have been subpoenaed. Bill has graciously offered to try to maybe get some of those witnesses done first so they can go back to their business. So he instead of calling Ms. Shook, he would like to call Sergeant Hill. So I'm going to go ahead and swear in Sergeant Hill.
Mr. Hill, who do you work for?
I work for the police department, Emerald City.
And in what capacity?
I'm a sergeant in the detective division assigned to the special victims unit.
Now, have you had the opportunity to be involved in a case regarding a little boy by the name of
Yes.
Orcha? Okay, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce some of these words.
Right.
I apologize. But with respect to that, did you do an investigation?
Yes, I did.
And what was the purpose of the investigation?
I determined the cause of injury to the child.
All right. And did you also investigate the people, the parents?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Were the parents indicted?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And with respect to the injury to the child, how old is this child?
I believe he was around 18, maybe 18 months.
All right. And as a result of your investigation, did the parents go to trial, or did they plead guilty, or what did they do?
From what I understand, they pled.
Objection, Your Honor. Objection. We're discussing a facts of a case that is not in this child that they're talking about is not in part of this case. We're not talking about Janai.
Well, is it my understanding that was the basis of the removal?
Not from the foster parents.
So, Dan, you're stating you did not remove Janian and Serafina as a result of allegations that they were injured. Draco, what you're stating on the record?
I have never removed Ochoa, the Ochoa child.
No, I'm talking about the judge asked, is the Ochoa boy one of the reasons why you removed the children that the Shooks had?
Yes.
Okay, well, then it's relevant and I'll overrule the objection.
With respect to the little boy, what were his injuries in your mind?
The injuries that I had found through the investigation was he had some bleeding behind his eyes and he had some brain bleeding, which we believe is shaken baby type injury.
All right. And he also was exposed to a lot of drugs, but
correct. He did test positive for, I believe it was cocaine.
Again, Your Honor, the positive test for cocaine and exposure from cocaine was from bio parents, not from the Shooks. They're discussing the Randall County case on the Ochoa child and for that removal at that time.
Okay, I'll overrule that objection.
Well, Mr. Hill, they took hair samples from this child, didn't they?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Were you aware they were positive for cocaine?
Correct, yes, they were.
Okay. Have you reviewed the Northwest Texas hospital records?
I have.
Okay. Where was he born?
I don't recall where he was born.
Well, I'm going to purport to you he was born in Northwest Texas Hospital. And would you agree with me that he was a premature baby?
Yes.
Okay. Would you agree with me that the medical records indicate that he had a grade 3 germinal matrix bleed of the brain?
Yes.
Okay.
I remember reading that in the, I'm sorry. I remember, I'm sorry. I remember reading those documents. Yes.
Okay. Do you know what a germinal matrix brain bleed is?
I do not.
Okay. Do you know what a grade 3 level designation is?
No.
Okay. And he also had hydrocephalus, didn't he?
I was told yes that he did have that.
Now, in your investigation, did you ever hear of James and Cheryl Shook?
Yes.
Okay. And just to be brief and cut to the point, during your investigation, did you come across any evidence in your professional expertise that would lead you to indicate that they hurt this little child in any way?
No.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Trout?
I have no questions for Mr. Hill.
Ms. Zavala, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, Your Honor.
All right, very good. I will go ahead then and may I go ahead and let Sergeant Hill return to his duties?
Please do.
Sergeant, you're dismissed and we appreciate your appearance here today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Judge. Have a good day.
You bet. Bill, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, I'd call Dulcie Rentiera. Miss Rentiera, we've never met before, have we?
We have not.
In fact, we've never even talked on the phone.
Correct.
In fact, I've called you numerous times, but you've never called me back.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'll forgive you. Thank you for being here today in response to the subpoena. I have a question. Who do you work for?
I work for Buckner Children and Family Services.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that is today your last day?
Tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow is your last day? Okay. How long have you worked for them?
I have worked with Buckner for over 5 years.
I'm sorry. Daniel's microphone's not working again. He just messaged.
Okay. Well, do you want to log off, Daniel, and try to log back on? That seems to work. And Mr. Amker, you may continue. I think you had just asked Ms. Renteria how long she had worked for Buckner.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, I have worked for Buckner for over 5 years.
And what are your duties there?
I am a home developer.
And could you tell us what a home developer is?
Of course, we license foster parents as foster to adopt or just foster parents. We help them get this process started, which means get them online training, CPR certified, pretty much anything to get them prepared to be foster to adopt parents.
Do you have any type of screening process initially to determine whether or not you would do that or waste your time? I mean, what do you do to screen?
Yes, we do a home study. We go to the foster parents' home, meet in person, and I do an interview with them. I go in detail about their past history, pretty much get to know them in general, and to see if they're a good fit to be foster parents.
Did you do the home study and do the visit with the Shooks?
I did.
Okay. Am I correct? They have an adoptive child in their home already, correct?
Correct.
All right. And as a result of that home study and the visit, did you see anything that would alarm you with respect to their ability to care for a child?
I did not.
Okay. And did you help facilitate them in the transition into their home of Janian and Serafina?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know the date that happened or the year?
I don't recall.
Okay. I'll ask Shell. She'll probably remember. But since that time, you've been with them ever since then?
Correct.
Okay. How many homes would you say you have been involved with in your 5 years of employment with Buckner?
A lot.
Okay. More than a dozen?
Probably so, yes.
Okay. With your experience with the Shooks, how often would you go to their home?
Every quarterly.
Okay. In your visits with them with respect to Janian, did they seem that they had everything under control in their home?
Yes.
Were they the primary caregiver to Janian and Serafina?
Yes.
Did they take the duties of making sure they were fed and bathed, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Did Shell or James, to your knowledge, take the children to the doctor when they were sick?
Yes.
Was it their requirement to attend to their physical and psychological needs while the children were in their home?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that they didn't do that?
No.
In your personal opinion, based upon your past experience of being a home care developer, with respect to the Shooks, have over this period of years that you've known them, have they ever given you any indication that they would ever hurt a child?
No.
As you said here today, would you recommend them to be able to adopt Janian and Serafina?
Yes.
In visiting with them in your duties, do they appear to have bonded to the children?
Yes.
What about your observations of the children? Do you think they've bonded to the Shooks?
Yes.
Do you think that would cause the children harm emotionally or maybe even physically if that bond were to be severed?
Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to study or to visit with people who have the expertise to tell you what happens when the severance of a bond occurs, what that can possibly lead to? Have you ever studied about that?
From college and from our trainings that we are required to take, yes.
Okay. In fact, it can increase the probability of alcoholism over the years, correct?
I'm unsure of that.
And have you ever seen any statistics that shows that there's an increased risk of drug use from children who have been separated from people that they've been bonded with? Have you ever seen those statistics?
I have not.
Have you ever seen the statistics of higher incidence of suicide from children as young adults who have been separated and have had their bonds severed?
Judge, I'd object. She's not qualified as an expert on this.
Yeah.
Well, my understanding is her experience in training has given her some background on at least some of this. And so far, she's indicated she's not aware of what Mr. Amper's asking, but I think she should be allowed to be asked, and I'll overrule the objection.
With respect to your experience with the Shooks, would you recommend them as the foster parents that you know to be able to continue the care of Janian and Serafina?
Yes.
Now, with respect to, I don't know how to ask this question in multiple questions, but you've been observing this situation ever since the children were removed from their homes, correct?
For a short period of time. When the investigation happened, yes. And then I went on maternity leave in September and just returned last week. So within that, from September 11th up until last week, I have not been up to date on the second part of the investigation.
Based upon what you know of up to September the 11th, Do you know of any reason why those children should have been removed?
I don't.
Okay. I have no further questions, Ms. Rentier. Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Mr. Trout?
Ms. Andrea, when you are doing your home studies and looking into homes, if a home has a unable to determine on their record, what is Buckner's procedure on that?
To close their home.
So you would close the home if there is a unable to determine on that home.
Correct.
Are you aware of what this investigation came up?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The current investigation that just finished, are you aware of what that determination was?
Yes.
And what was that?
Unable to determine.
So is Buckner's policy normally to close a home as far as their licensing if there's an unable to determine?
Buckner's practice, yes.
And would that change your outcome on whether the home could move forward with adoption through y'all?
Sorry.
Let me ask that again. Would an unable to determine, if Buckner were to close the home, that would change the outcome on whether a family could adopt through Buckner?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Renteria, just to be clear, has Buckner made that determination with regard to the Shooks?
Yes.
And so has their home currently been closed?
Not at this moment.
What's your understanding of what are you waiting on in making that final determination?
We want to know the outcome of this hearing.
Okay, so if the court were just to go forward, would Buckner then follow that court's order?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Ms. Zavala, do you have any questions for Ms. Renteria?
Just a few, hopefully.
Sure.
Ms. Renteria, just for some background, these children were with the Shooks. An investigation started and the children were removed the first time while that investigation was pending, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the children were returned back to the Shooks' home?
Yes.
Okay. And then the investigation was reopened and the children were re-removed from their home?
Yes. They were placed in respite.
Okay. It's my understanding that potentially the second time they were moved because of a decision of Buckner. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I was on maternity leave during that time.
Okay. Do you know who would have been involved from Buckner to make that kind of decision?
I'm assuming my supervisor director.
Okay. Is that person here to testify today? Do you know?
She is.
Okay. Okay. If I understood the judge's question in your response earlier, if the judge chooses to place Janian back in the home, Buckner can make an exception and keep that home open. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I pass witness.
Your Honor, may I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely. Yes, you may.
Of the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay. Ms. Rentiera, when you had made the distinction between respite and removal, can you explain the difference in those terms for this court?
Of course. So respite, we are removing the kids from the current foster home and putting them into a licensed foster home that has the capacity to care for them. They are technically not discharged from Buckner in that case.
And what happens in a removal?
In a removal, they are completely discharged from Buckner.
All right, and let me ask you, and in this case, and if you don't know, that's fine as well, but do you know whether if Buckner makes an exception to its practice that it would keep the home open for the entirety of whatever process lies forward, or are they keeping the home open to allow them to find a different agency based on their practice?
A different agency for their practice.
Okay, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Amker, any follow-up?
Yes, Ms. Rentiera, Ms. Zavala asked you a question. I think I want to make sure it's correct. When the children were removed, and then the children were placed back, and then they were removed again.
Correct.
The first time they were placed back by Child Protective Services, weren't they?
Correct.
Okay, and are you aware of the fact that the first time they were placed back, there was still a UTD, an unable to determine, on their home? Were you aware of that?
It was ruled out. It wasn't an unable to determine. It's ruled out.
Okay, it's my understanding that it was a UTD. Are you sure about that?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so is it your understanding that as far as determinations have gone with respect to this child, there has been a vacillation with respect to the determinations by whoever's making them? And what I'm saying is they've gone from one ruling to another. Have they done that?
Correct.
Okay. And am I correct that even within to your knowledge, are you aware of the fact that there's disagreement with respect to the people that are making those determinations? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not really sure.
Okay. Do you know who the people are? Let's look at this last UTD. Is Buckner aware of who's involved in the process of determining the UTD?
I don't.
Okay. You don't know who they are?
No.
Don't know how many people?
No.
Don't know what records they've reviewed?
No.
You don't know whether or not they've even talked to other doctors?
Correct.
Okay. Even after all these questions that have been asked you, is it still your opinion that Janian and Serafina should be returned to the Shooks?
Yes.
Okay, pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Trout, any follow-up?
Couple real quick, Your Honor. Sure. Mr. Andrea, you stated Mr. Hammaker's questions that your understanding there was a ruled out and then a UTD, unable to determine. And the company you currently work for, General Practice, is on a UTD ruling to close the home.
Correct.
Are you involved? You mentioned earlier that if the court decides to place the child back in the home, that Buckner would keep it open, keep the home open in order for them to find another agency. Is that correct?
Correct.
And are you involved in that decision making, or is that decision making made above you?
Above me.
So as far as that procedure, that is just what you have seen through working for them.
Correct.
Okay. But you're not involved in any of that decision.
Correct.
No further questions, Jeremy.
Ms. Renteria, again, please excuse my ignorance, and I just don't have any experience really to understand this. Just in general terms, when parents are seeking to be foster parents, do they always go through an outside agency such as Buckner to be approved, or sometimes is that done directly by the department?
Sometimes they can go through the department, but most of the time they go through an agency to seek more help.
How common is it that Buckner or some other third-party agency would initially handle the approval, but then a foster family would have to look to another agency to do that? Is that common at all?
Not to my knowledge.
And so just for my, again, kind of general knowledge, what other, I'm familiar with Buckner, just because you guys have got a lot of name recognition, but what other agencies are there, at least in our area, that the Shooks could reach out to in the event Buckner would seek to hand them off to somebody else?
There's a Bring, there's a World for Children, there's Spare, there's quite a few within the area.
Okay. And in your past experience, have you ever been involved where Buckner has stepped back and told a foster family, we need for you guys to seek someone else to, and I'll just say carry your paperwork or whatever the term is, continue to sponsor you as foster families? Have you been involved when that's happened?
Not myself, but it has happened, yes.
I'm just curious, is there any kind of stigma associated with Buckner stepping back? Does that make a new agency, in your experience, hesitant to then take that family on?
It just really depends on their policy and how they work.
Okay. And I apologize, Ms. Zavala, I kind of jumped in front of you. Do you have any follow-up?
No, Your Honor, I'm good with this witness.
Okay, very good. Mr. Amker, anything further?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Rentiera, you would agree with me that no matter what happens here today, no matter how Judge Board rules, the Shooks are still stuck with an unable to determine on their own personal record, aren't they?
Correct.
And you're not telling the court that other adoption agencies are going to meet them with open arms and want to take them as a client when they have an RTA on their record, are they?
I'm not sure if they will or not. It's up to their policy.
Well, that's the policy of Buckner, isn't it?
Yes.
And do you know why that's the policy of Buckner?
I don't.
Do you think the state of Texas is going to give an agency that won't adhere to their own guidance with respect to UTA any children to work with?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. I think that's a very wise decision. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Anybody have anything else for Ms. Renteria?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
May she be excused. I know she's probably got a lot of things to tie up with, tomorrow being her last day. Any objection to me excusing her?
No, Your Honor, and congratulations on your new baby.
Thank you.
No objection.
Thank you, Ms. Renteria. I'll go ahead and excuse you, ma'am, and you're free to stay if you'd like to, but you may certainly leave if you need to.
Okay, I'll just stay on for a little bit.
Okay, very good. Mr. Amker, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, I would call Shell Shook. Ms. Shook, is this your husband seated next to you?
Yes, it is.
Now, am I correct that you and your husband had been fostering Janian and Serafina?
Correct. We call her Gracie. We don't call her Serafina.
Okay. So you call her Gracie?
Yes.
Okay. Listen, if no one objects, I'll be more than happy to call her Gracie because the Serafina doesn't roll off my tongue near as easy as Gracie. Okay. When did Janian first come into your home?
He came into our home on January 20th of 2021.
How old was he?
5 days old.
5 days old. And how old was he when he was removed from your home the first time?
2.5 years old.
How old?
2.5 years old.
2.5 years old. So
yes,
I take it that you and your husband, since the day he was 5 days old, have been the only people who have washed him and bathed him, other than maybe when you've had a babysitter or a family member come over to take care of him.
We've never had a babysitter. We've never had a babysitter. It's always been us.
Okay. So you all have been his sole caregivers, correct?
Correct.
You've taken him to the doctor, correct?
Yes.
Yes. We got a little lag, so
yes.
We'll see if we can make it through this. But you've given him all the guidance that a young person would have needed it during that time period of his from 5 days to 2.5.
Yes.
Purchased his clothes.
Yes.
Made his meals every day.
Every day.
Changed all his diapers.
Yes.
And you have day by day, minute by minute, you've become attached to Janian, haven't you?
Very.
And let me ask you, do you have any doubt in your mind that he's become attached to you and bonded to you?
He's very bonded to me.
And would you agree with me that you have substantial past contact with that child?
I'm sorry, do what?
I said, would you agree with me that you have had substantial past contact with that child?
Correct.
In other words, in all probability, you've had all the contact with that child since he's been 5 days old, till he was removed from your home.
That is correct. Yes.
So you've had him over a year in your home at the time we filed this motion for leave to intervene, correct?
I had him for over 2.5 years.
Okay. And would you agree with me that even though his parents' rights have been allegedly terminated due to some unforeseen circumstance, it would not be in that child's best interest for them to ever be in control of Janian again, correct?
No, it would not.
Are you worried about him?
Very.
Do you think that this has been good to have him pulled from your home, not only once, but twice?
No, I do not.
And would you agree with me that that probably holds true for Gracie as well?
Absolutely.
How old was Gracie when you got her?
She was placed with us when she was 7 days old. And I had to finally take her out of the NICU when she was 2 weeks old.
Your Honor, I would object to any testimony on Serafina. She's not at this point, she's not a party, and Mr. Hamburger and his clients haven't intervened into that case. So if we're dealing with Janine today, so I would just ask that we keep the testimony to Janine at this time.
Well, I'm certainly not going to make any rulings with regard to Gracie, but I think in terms of best interest of the child, when we're talking about Janine, certainly close contact with his sibling without some extenuating circumstances would typically be in his best interest. So to the extent it's relevant to that, I'll overrule the objection and allow the questioning.
Thank you, Your Honor. And that's where I was going. You would agree with me that those two children have grown up together.
Yes.
And it would not be in either one of their best interests to be separated, would it?
No, it would not.
To your knowledge, since they were removed from your home, have they ever been separated?
They first time when they were removed the first time, they were separated in different respite homes, and then they were put together in a second home. So they've technically been in 3 respite homes already, to my knowledge.
Okay. But at least at some portion in time since they've been removed from your home, for whatever time it was, even the children were separated.
Correct.
Okay. And you would agree with me, that's sure not in Janine's best interest to be separated from the other child.
No, he's very bonded with his sister.
Okay. Probably looks after his little sister.
He really does.
Okay. And would you agree with me that doing those type of things from children, even after they've been separated from you and your husband, is abuse of a child?
Yes, I agree.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I know this is very painful for Shell. What's going on? I know I have filed 2 motions, and with the court's latitude, I would like to get into testimony regarding her knowledge of the little boy that was placed in her home for which the UTD came out. Can I have the court's permission to ask some questions regarding that?
Yeah, and I think the court's certainly opened the door on that already. And to the extent she has any personal knowledge, I certainly wouldn't want her guessing or relying on hearsay or anything, but she's certainly able to testify on her own personal knowledge. Well,
Shell, let me ask you, do you remember what day and what time you were called by the department and asked to take into you and James's home the Ochoa boy?
They called us on May 16th around 6:45, and we agreed to take him a little after 7. He was not placed with us until 1:30 a.m. on May 17th.
Okay. So they brought him to your home early in the morning hours of the 17th.
Correct.
Okay. And would you agree with me that you were concerned with the condition that he was brought to you and your husband?
Yes, I was so concerned I took pictures.
Okay. And in fact, the boy had numerous scratches, was filthy, dirty, and bruises on him.
Correct.
And he was discolored from the waist down.
Yes, he was bright red.
Okay. And this was while he was in the care of the department.
Correct. The on-call investigator was holding him at the time because we were signing the paperwork.
And what did you and your husband do with him at that time?
Right after we signed paperwork and she left, we immediately took pictures of the bruise on his back. and all of the scratches behind his ear, on his arms, the back of his head.
Why'd you take a picture? Why'd you take a picture?
Hold on, Dale, just 1 minute. Mr. Shook, I just need to caution you. Your wife's the one under oath now. I haven't sworn you in. So please try to refrain from making any comments, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I
Go ahead.
apologize, Your Honor.
No, that's okay. Go ahead,
Shell,
Bill.
why did you take a picture of the little back of the boy's head?
I took a picture of Draco's scratches and bruises so that they would understand that those were there when he was placed with me.
Did you notice he had a flat head?
Yes.
Okay. Most babies don't have flat heads on the back, do they?
No.
Did they tell you that he was a 30-week preemie?
It was in the Common app that we saw before we accepted placement.
Okay. Were you aware of the fact that he had hydrocephalus?
No.
Did they not tell you that?
No.
Did they tell you he was a grade 3 germinal matrix bleed baby?
No.
In fact, you're not trained for that, are you?
Not trained, nor am I licensed for a medical fragile child.
Okay. And they knew that, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you all have helped the department out before with babies, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. But you don't have the training to even care for a child like that they placed in your home.
No.
Okay. Now, what did you do after you got him, took pictures of him, and what did you do with him?
Immediately gave him a bath, and then we fed him a bottle and put him to bed.
All right. And I'm not familiar with the requirements, but am I correct that once a baby comes into a home, you're supposed to take them to a doctor within 72 hours? Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And did you what did you do that?
I took him on May 18th to our pediatrician.
Okay. And who was your pediatrician?
Haley Gibson at Amarillo Pediatric Clinic.
Okay. Is she the pediatrician for the other little baby that you adopted?
She's a pediatrician for every child we've ever had in our home.
Okay. So what did Haley tell you after she examined this child?
She said this is not a child that we need in our home and that we needed to have him removed immediately because he had medical issues, and she was going to try and find his birth records. And I told her that I needed a letter to provide to Buckner regarding the fact that he needed to be in a different home. And she mailed the letter out to me.
Okay. And in that letter, did she address the conditions that the child had?
That is correct, because she found his birth records.
Okay. And where did she find them? Do you know?
Northwest Texas.
Okay. And are those the birth records where you first determined that he had a germinal matrix bleed?
That is correct.
Okay. And it's not like picking up the phone and calling the department and say, hey, you gave me a child that I'm not eligible to take care of. Come and get him this afternoon, is it?
No, can't do that.
They have how many days they leave a child like that with you before you're able to get him someplace where they need to be? How long is that?
Buckner on May 24th put in a 30-day notice.
Okay. So for lack of a better, well, let me ask you. So Buckner, as well as the department, had a letter from a medical professional that said, hey, the Shooks have this child that they're not competent to take care of. You need to get him, correct?
Yes.
And yet they didn't come get him, did they?
No, they just did the paperwork for a 30-day removal.
Okay.
30-day discharge is what it's called.
Even though they're the person responsible for the life of this child, knowing that he had all these problems, they continued to leave him with you. Even though you loved him and have loved all the kids that have been in your home, you weren't trained to take care of a child like this.
Correct.
And when was the next time that you realized that you had to get help since no one was taking him out of your home? Was it when you were bathing him again?
He had a stomach bug that he and passed around the house too on May 24th, and then on May 28th, after he was, of course we had bathed him in between, but finally he was done with his stomach bug, and I wanted him to feel a little bit better before bed because he screamed constantly while he was here and would scratch himself. So on May 28th, we gave him a bath and got him out and dried him off and put his pajamas on him, his diaper, and we laid him down in the living room floor because he couldn't sit on his own or stand or walk or anything. So laid him down, and Jim was going to make his bottle while I was making the other baby's bottle. And I heard Jim saying, "Draco, wake up, Draco, wake up, Draco, wake up." And I come into the living room to see what was going on. And he had rolled his eyes in the back of his head. And Jim at that time started doing, sternum rubs and was lightly tapping his cheeks, trying to get him to respond. And he wasn't. His breathing was real shallow. So on May 29th at 12:06 a.m., I had to call 911 to get him help because we didn't know what was going on.
And I'm sure the ambulance came?
Yeah, the ambulance came, gave him some oxygen, and he was fine. I got the car seat out of the car, gave it to them. They loaded him up in the ambulance, and I followed him to BSA hospital. And the on-call supervisor for Buckner, Christine Bollinger, met me up there and stayed with me the whole time.
Do you know what they did for him? What type of tests they did on Draco when he was in the hospital?
They did lab work, they did a x-ray, and they did a CAT scan.
Okay. And I'm sure they had competent professionals that looked at all those tests. Wouldn't you agree?
Correct. Yes, the ER physician.
And did a physician come in and tell you anything?
He did. He came in and he said, due to the results of the CT scan, he's going to need to see a pediatric neurosurgeon and have surgery. And I said, well, what was on the CT scan? And he said, due to the moderate level of hydrocephalus, he's going to need to have surgery to have a shunt put in. And I said, okay. And I said, where is this going to happen at? And he said, we're going to attempt to get him a bed at UMC in Lubbock.
Okay.
And
did
so,
you drive him there? Did you drive him to Lubbock, or did they fly him to Lubbock?
They flew him to Lubbock because they didn't have an ambulance available to drive him.
All right. And did either you or your husband go to Lubbock as well?
My husband went to Lubbock.
All right.
But somewhere between BSA and UMC, they gave him Keppra, which is a seizure medication, because I'm guessing he had a seizure in flight. So.
All right. All right. Now, after all this has taken place, you understand that the department is alleging that you all caused that little child's problem. You understand that?
I understand, yeah.
And they removed Janian and Serafina from your home as a result of that allegation.
Correct.
Okay. And then at some point in time, they in fact, on, let's see, around the 1st of July, they sent you a letter ruling out any physical abuse by you or your husband in this situation, correct?
They sent a letter on our son that we adopted, ruling us out in abuse on him because they made him get a full skeletal survey.
So
just
let me ask
they did Janelle and Serafina.
So did they also allege that you were abusing your own child?
Yeah, they stripped him down, had us strip him down naked in our living room and checked him for bruises. And They sent a letter finally saying that we were ruled out in abuse against him.
Did they have you take him to the bridge?
Yes.
Okay. So did you drive him to the bridge?
No, they would not let us.
They wouldn't let you take your own son to the bridge for further examination after already stripping him down in your front room? So they sent him with a stranger? They sent him with a stranger?
Well, I asked if our caseworker with Buckner could take him since he knows her, and they said that was fine. And so I made sure it was okay with Buckner first. And so they let Lindley Laster take him to the bridge and bring him back.
How old is this little boy?
4.
4? How do you like that?
Yeah, he was 3 at the time.
Did that have an impact on that 3-year-old boy?
It still has an impact on him.
Okay. I'm sorry. As we said here today, Cheryl, as we said here today, before all these people, before Judge Ward, and more importantly, before God, have you ever done anything to Draco, Ochea, or any other child to hurt them?
Absolutely not. I would never.
Okay. Do you miss your children?
Oh, God, so much.
Would you love to spend 5 minutes talking with the people that made this absurd allegation against you?
Yes, I would.
Did anybody?
I just want my children.
Yeah, but did anybody on this committee that's been set up, did any of these people or any of these doctors ever call you one time? Any of them?
No.
All right. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
None of them.
Why don't we break for lunch if that's okay? And then I have that adversary hearing at 1, but let's all log back on here for the continuation of this hearing at 1:30 p.m. and hopefully we'll be done. If for some reason it looks like that adversary hearing will go longer than that, I'll have Rachel try to get in touch with everybody and tell you a different time. But right now, let's plan on 1:30 and we'll go ahead and be in recess for lunch. Anybody that's been subpoenaed, you're still subject to the court's order and subpoena, and so please comply with that. And we'll see everybody back here, except those of you that I'm going to see at 1. I'll see the rest of you back here at 1:30.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Shook, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
If you don't hear a question clearly, sometimes I'm told I trail off at the end of my question. So if you don't hear me clearly, just ask me and I'll repeat my question, okay?
Okay.
Now, I know there was some talk at the very beginning about when the Ochoa child was placed in your home. You mentioned the Common App, and that is a report that you get saying what the child. Explain that to me. What is the Common App?
The Common App talks about the circumstances of why the children were removed. It talked about all of the children in this family, and it gave more detail about every other child than it did him. It just said he's unable to sit unsupported, he can't stand, he can't crawl, he can't walk, that he's a happy baby and loves to be held. Which
and does the okay, sorry, and so is that something that comes from Buckner or comes from the department?
I think it came from DFPS.
And is that information, who, to your understanding, is it your license through Buckner? And so does Buckner approve y'all to be able to take care of certain children?
Correct.
Okay. And so just for transparency on it, this was not a case where the child was just brought into your home and dropped in your lap on a sudden notice. There was some policy and procedure that went through before the child was placed in your home. Is that correct?
We had to accept placement or deny placement. And then they have to get it approved through whomever they get it approved through. And then they get the paperwork typed up, and then they bring the child to the home.
And so in these type of instances, do y'all have a say so on whether y'all want to accept a kid or not?
We do.
Okay. Okay. And I just want to clarify on that it's you know, I know there were I just don't want to seem like my clients had just walked in and dropped this child in your lap. There were procedures that went through before the child was placed with y'all.
Correct.
And y'all actually, did y'all make a report to an ombudsman due to some of these issues once they arose?
I made a report to the ombudsman regarding the caseworker for Janian and Gracie, because she told the respite home that we were under investigation for child abuse and some other information that she had no right telling them. Okay. So I made a report of that. Yes, I did.
Okay. And like I said, I'm just trying to make sure I have all the facts on it. So, but y'all have been working with the foster care for a while. I mean, y'all have adopted a child. Okay.
Yes.
And so earlier when your attorney asked you some questions, there was, I believe the language was, the department was accusing you of these things. You understand with the department, because they're placing children in homes, that there are certain investigations and things that they have to make sure is okay before leaving children in homes or placing children in homes. Do you understand that?
I know that we get audited by licensing every year or every 2 years.
And you understand that during this investigation, it wasn't just the department coming in and saying, y'all did this. They were reacting to reports they got from, I'm assuming, doctors and medical providers at the time.
Your Honor, I object. Is that testimony or is that a question?
Please rephrase it. Well, she can answer. I took it as a question.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Is it your understanding that the concerns with the child came from reports from doctors and other professionals?
When my husband was interviewed by the Dr. Patty Patterson, which is the abuse specialist that the department uses.
Yes.
She said that there were 2 reports made, one against us and one against the parents. That's when we learned of it. So no, we were not aware. We did not. We've never been in an investigation.
Okay. And so, but the investigation came from injuries that were found to the Ochoa child.
Well, the first report was due to the injuries that were found when I took him to the doctor on May 18th.
Yes.
And the investigator came to the appointment with some paperwork that she had. So that's where the first report came in at.
And so what I'm getting at is these reports come and the department is required to look into possible issues. You understand that?
Well, I understand that, but I wasn't aware at the time.
And the child your children were removed and then placed back in the home and then removed back in September. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
so just so I'm clear, when we say the children, are we talking about the adoptive child as well, or just the foster children?
Foster children on this. I apologize.
Okay, thanks.
And is that correct, Ms. Shue?
Yes, they were removed May 30th, brought back July 5th. And then they put us on a safety plan on August 18th. And then out of the blue, they showed up September 22nd and removed the children.
And do you know why were you told they were removed at that time?
Well, I was told that a doctor changed his report and they were going to have to remove the children. But that wasn't the exact truth. So.
And who were you told that by?
I was told that by the director. Her name was Nikki, I think. When her and Lindley Laster showed up at the house to get the kids.
Okay, so the people you're talking about right now, are they work for the department, or did they work for the agency that you're licensed through?
They work through Buckner, my agency.
Okay. So on the second removal in August, September, that was Buckner that came and did that.
Buckner removed them both times, but the first time was because they were told to by St. Francis or I guess investigations. I'm not sure which one.
Okay. All right. And that's what I was trying to clear up. When your attorney asked you earlier, I wasn't sure on who you were saying removed at that time. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mrs. Zavala?
Just a few. Shell, have we worked together with several different children in your home?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in addition to Janian and his sister, I've had at least one other client placed there, right?
Correct.
Okay.
My other children were all with Miss Lucero. So.
Now, I'm not involved in the Ochoa case at all, correct?
Correct, because he's out of Randall County.
Okay. Have you always been cooperative in providing myself and my office any of the information we need about any of the kids in your home?
Yes.
Have you always allowed us access to come into your home and visit?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Amker?
Thank you, Your Honor. Shell, I have a few questions regarding some comments that you gave in response to Mr. Trout's questioning.
Okay.
One, prior to the time that they brought the child to you, the Ochoa child, had he ever spent a night in your home?
No.
Did they tell you that he would hit his head intentionally?
No.
Did they tell you that he would scratch himself violently?
No.
And I think you already said they didn't tell you that he had a germinal matrix bleed of the brain.
No, they didn't tell me.
Did they tell you he had hydrocephalus?
No.
In fact, you've testified you're not trained to treat children for that.
No, I'm not.
Did they know you were not trained to treat children of that type?
They know we were licensed for basic care.
You're licensed only for basic care.
Correct.
Okay. You also made a comment that when I couldn't catch exactly what you said, when they came to pick up the children the last time, who was it? Nikki picked them up?
Nikki and Lindley.
Okay. And were you having a conversation with them about the reason for the finding? What precipitated the comment that wasn't actually the truth? What do you mean by that?
I was told off the record by someone from there that the investigator, Mr. Haskins, said that this case was either going to be determined or undetermined and that their license would be in jeopardy.
Whose license?
That is the actual Buckner's. So that was the actual reason they removed them.
So it's your understanding that there was a threat made to Bruckner?
Threat, coerced, something. Yeah.
Okay. By this Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
And who does he work for, if you know?
He works for DFPS. He's the child care licensing investigator.
And when you were told this, were there just two people present or three people present?
It was just myself and that person. And of course, I have cameras outside my house, and the conversation took place at my front door. So it did get recorded, not intentionally, but it just automatically records.
Okay.
So
do you still have that recording?
I do.
All right. Is there any reason why you can't tell us who that other person was today?
I really don't want to get them fired.
I understand. You understand if the judge required you to answer that, you would have to?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I would.
All right. I think I'll pass the witness.
Stroud, any follow-up?
Just one quick, Your Honor. Ms. Shook, when Mr. Amaker was just asking about that, you said that it was threats made. Is that the way you took it?
I would take it as a threat. I mean, you're sitting there telling them that it's going to be determined or undetermined and their license is in jeopardy if they don't remove a child. So, I mean, the children, I mean, I would take that as a threat.
So are you saying they said that it was whose license was at jeopardy? Is what
Buckner's.
You're saying? Okay, so you're saying the investigator told Buckner that their whole agency license would be threatened.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify on that. Thank you. Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Vall, any follow-up?
No, Your Honor.
Very good. Let's move on then. Mr. Amaker, you can call your next witness. And I'm not going to try to force you to how to do your order, but we might see if we can get some of these Buckner folks over with just so they can leave if necessary.
You know what, Your Honor? I have 3 more witnesses on my list, but I'm going to close.
Oh, okay. Very good. I appreciate that. Well, then let me allow the department to call their first witness.
Your Honor, I do not want to release those people. I may use them as rebuttal witnesses.
Okay, very good. I'll just make sure everybody still stays with us until they're dismissed.
Your Honor, I would call Nicole Locker. And so earlier, I just have a few questions for you. Earlier, one of y'all's other employees testified. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the question was asked during that on who makes the decisions to close a home or not, depending on if it would say unable to determine. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Okay. And are you one of those people that makes that decision?
I am.
Okay. Do you make that decision or are you involved in the decision making?
I am involved in that decision making.
And so is that true that what I believe it was Ms. Renteria testified to earlier that if it's an unable to determine, it is standard practice for Buckner to close a home?
Yes, that is correct.
And has Buckner made a decision on this case?
Yes, we have.
And what was that decision?
That we would go ahead and close the home due to the unable to determine disposition.
And can you tell me a little on why that decision is made and why it goes that way?
Sure. So, we have to make a lot of difficult decisions in the course of our work. And the very first thing we have to put above everything else is child safety. We have to put aside our feelings about our foster parents, people that we have a lot of respect for and have worked with for a very long time, such as in this situation. And we have to be able to put children's safety above everything else. When we're not able to get a ruled out disposition that physical abuse has occurred, then we are not able to make a confident decision to place additional children in a home, that we were not able to rule that out. And we would also not be able to recommend adoption for that home.
So it is strictly looking at the facts of the investigation, the outcome, and the safety of the child.
Correct.
There's no, I don't want to really say it this way, there's no personal feelings toward or bad feelings toward the home necessarily. It's just the rulings that came out of that investigation and what y'all believe would be in the best interest and safety of the child.
That's correct.
And is that Due to the unable to determine in this case, that is the decision y'all came to.
Yes, that's correct.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Lucker, just so I'm clear, when we're talking about unable to determine, is that an independent decision Buckner made, or is that solely the decision of the department?
So Buckner had no, we had no say in what disposition was determined in this investigation. That came from residential child care investigations that we're investigating.
And just you're going to have to bear with me because I don't know all the acronyms. I don't know all the ins and outs. I still am not sure I understand the relationship between the department and St. Andrews and Buckner. There's a lot of moving parts. But in this particular instance, did Buckner do any independent investigation to determine whether Buckner, could make a determination as to whether anything untoward happened in the Shook home?
Sir, so Buckner, as a licensed agency, we are not able to interfere with an open investigation. That would, we would get in trouble for doing that. We have to basically kind of take a step back and let that investigation play out and let the investigators come to their conclusions. We're not able to interfere in that.
Okay. So, and I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, but so the answer to my question would be no, Buckner did not do an independent investigation.
Correct.
Okay. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you disagree with the department's determination, do you still comply with that determination and close the home anyway?
That's a little bit tricky to answer because it's not our place to disagree with the findings of an investigation. If it's especially an abuse or neglect investigation, there are certain circumstances where we might have standards violations that we could kind of request that things be kind of reviewed. But in this situation, it's abuse or neglect. And so we don't really get an opportunity to agree or disagree because we have a license. We are bound by the terms of licensing standards as well as contract standards. And so we essentially respect those decisions that are made, and we base our decisions off of those outcomes.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, based on Ms. Renteria's testimony and Ms. Shook's testimony, there are instances where you're in the home doing some type of oversight independent of the department. And in those instances, if you were to observe something that caused you concern, would you then have the authority to shut that home down, or do you then have to report those findings to the department and then let them work it through their system?
We could do both. Anytime we see abuse or neglect, we are mandated reporters and we have to report that to the state hotline. And as an agency that holds a license that is bound by minimum standards, this home is on my license right now. And so right now, because of the unable to determine, that's on my license. So I have to make those decisions. And we as an agency can make the decision to go ahead and close a home without having someone tell us we have to do that. Yes, sir.
So in this instance, independent of the findings by the department, are you aware of anything else that came about through your investigations which would have led you to close the Shook's home, but for the unable to determine by the department?
At this time, we didn't conduct any investigation specifically, just based on our time in the home. We never saw anything that led us to report any concerns or have to report any
witnessed abuse or neglect.
And just so I'm clear, everything in my head, at least, that I've heard so far, that would be the basis, if any, for any determination by the department with regard to harm to a child, all deal with the Ochoa child. Are you aware of any allegations that were made against the Shooks with regard to Janian or the little girl they call Gracie?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any independent allegations of abuse or neglect against the Shooks regarding their adoptive son?
No, sir.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I jumped in there. Ms. Zavala, do you have any questions for Ms. Lochner?
I think just a few. And to be fair, I don't know if these questions are appropriate for you, but I just don't know who to get an answer from. Let's say that the judge rules today to place the child back in the Shooks home. Do you guys then have any ability to rethink the decision to close the home?
So we've had discussions regarding what Buckner's decision would be in the event that the judge does order the kids back into the home today. And, we want to, do whatever we can to make this an easy transition. We would ask for the family to try to find another agency, like Dulce had mentioned earlier. I think just over the course of this investigation and how some of the conversations have happened and just kind of the way that some of the things were handled, I don't know that the working relationship between Buckner and the Shooks is where it would need to be for, I think, either side to feel comfortable continuing to work together. But we would give them an opportunity to find another agency to transfer them to before we would close them, just as kind of a courtesy.
Okay. As far as if their house is closed with y'all and they are unable to find another agency to license them, is there any path, private adoption, any path to get to a place where they could adopt these kids?
I can speak to what I've seen. I can't necessarily say I recommend one thing or another, but I know that Mr. Hamker has asked that, PMC just be transferred to the Shook family today so that they could pursue a private adoption. I don't know if St. Francis might have another option for them, but those would be, just in my experience in the field for 15 years, those are kind of a couple of things I've seen happen in the past in different cases.
Okay, thank you. I pass the witness.
Ms. Locker, let me just ask you straight up. There's been an allegation. Are you aware of any threats made by the department against Buckner with regard to your licensing?
No, sir.
Mr. Hamker, do you have any follow-up?
Yes, Your Honor, I have a few. Thank you. Ms. Lochner, what department did you say you ran?
I oversee foster care and adoption for West Texas, including Amarillo, Lubbock, and Midland for Buckner.
Okay. Do you know what James 1:7 says?
I'm sorry, not off the top of my head.
Okay, it's on your webpage. I would suggest you check that out. Do you know what the core values of your department is?
We are servant spirited, and I can't recall the others just off the top of my head, but
there's 5 core values of Buckner in your department.
Yes,
you know
sir.
what any of them are?
I know that it spells out first, sir.
It spells out what?
First.
Okay, well, that's close. I mean, that's a start.
Yeah, I'd object to relevance on that.
Well, do you even know your mission statement?
We are setting the standard for foster care with a Christ as I'm sorry. I don't know it word for word, but I know that we are a faith-based organization and that we follow the example of Christ in all of the work we do, and that we strive to set the standard for the work that we're doing in the foster care field.
It's much simpler than that. It's just one sentence and it's on your webpage. But so are you saying that, is it your testimony today that this home is closed or is going to be closed depending upon what the judge determines?
So it is our plan to close the home. We did notify Mr. and Mrs. Shook yesterday of our plan to close the home. It has not officially been submitted for closure in the system as of this moment, but that is our plan. But again, just as I mentioned just a little bit ago, I mean, we are willing to allow for time for a transfer if that's needed.
So Dulcie Rentera was correct. This home is still open at today.
Yes, as of this moment, yes.
Okay. And when you say this home is on your license, what do you mean?
Because I am the licensed child placing agency administrator for our West Texas operations, including Amarillo, Lubbock, and Midland. It's my license that these homes are licensed under.
Okay. So do you have any duty to check any of those homes out, or is that delegated to someone else?
That is a shared effort.
With you and someone else?
With, yes, sir.
Have you ever been in the Shook's home?
I've been in the Shook home once.
One time?
Yes, sir.
That's in what, 2.5 years?
I only started with Buckner in March of this year, so I've only been with Buckner since that time.
Okay. Have you visited with have you taken the time to visit with any of the Lubbock neurosurgeons that inspected the child where the UTD was come from?
No, sir. We're not allowed to interfere with an open investigation.
Okay. I'm talking about doing your own investigation, not
Your Honor,
interfering.
I would object. Ms. Lockler's already stated that they do not do independent investigations, that is left up to the state.
Sustained.
I want to try to restate Stacy Zavala's question to you. If you allow the Shooks to stay with you as one of your homes and they cannot get another person to license them, I take it you will close their home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So your option that you gave earlier about PMC, that's the only clear option that you can see, correct?
Yes, sir. As I stated, I don't have any course of action that I personally recommend, but those are just avenues I've seen in other cases historically.
You wouldn't object to the Shooks being made sole managing conservator so they could adopt the children, would you?
I don't
Your
know
Honor,
that
I would object. Ms. Lockler's not, she is not involved in that decision as far as making a conservatorship with, that is between the state and the Shooks involved in the case, the parties involved in the case at that time.
Sustained.
May I rephrase that question, Your Honor?
Sure.
Yeah. In your own personal opinion, Nicole, do you see anything wrong with rejoining these children under the idea that you had with them being made conservator?
I don't know that I could answer that favorably just based on, as I mentioned earlier, the information that led to the unable to determine, since we're not able to rule out at this point any abuse.
Yeah. And you don't know who was involved in any of that decision?
Just that it was residential child care investigations.
You don't know any of the names of any of the individuals?
I know the name of the investigator that we were working with.
Okay. And do you know any of the names of the doctors, if any?
I do not.
Do you know the names of anybody else?
Can you be specific about what capacity?
That made the decision on the unable to determine? Do you know the names of anybody that made that decision?
I do not.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Trout, any redirect?
No.
Okay, very good. May we go ahead and dismiss Ms. Locker?
I have no questions for you.
Objection.
All right, Ms. Locker,
Okay.
you're excused if you'd like to be. You're more than welcome to stay with us also if you'd like to.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. The department may call its next witness.
No more witnesses, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
No more witnesses.
Stacy, would you like to call any witnesses as the ad litem?
No, Your Honor.
Before I give you guys an opportunity to close, let me just say, first of all, again, I think I've expressed to you my inexperience, particularly with this type of procedure. I still have some questions about what authority the court has with regard to managing conservatorship after the final order was entered, number one. Number two, of course, Buckner's not a party, and I don't think I have any authority to tell them what they should do, one way or the other. And so I have some questions about that, and it very well may be if I'm not further enlightened, I may need to take it under advisement once you guys are done.
Your Honor, if you would like to have a breakout room with the attorneys, we would be glad to give you what little knowledge we probably have.
Well, and I'm happy for you to make that in closing remarks. I don't think we need to go off the record for that. So any enlightenment you can give me in that regard, I would certainly appreciate. And I don't want to confine your closing arguments. Bill, I guess it's your burden of proof. I'll let you go first and last.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll try to be brief. Your Honor, you have heard today from a gentleman, Sergeant Wes Hill, who's been trained to do what he does, to do investigations himself for the Amarillo Police Department, and has for a long, long time. And he was able to, as he stated, due to his investigation subsequent to the indictment, to able to get the biological mother and father to plead guilty to, I'm looking at both of their orders from Judge Estevez, to the statutory offense of the Penal Code of 22.041E, second-degree felonies regarding this child. And he also stated that in his investigation, he found no evidence, and he stated that he had visited with the doctors. He found no evidence that the Shooks had any hand in this. In fact, unfortunately, in my opinion, from reading the medical records, this child was tragically damaged prior to when he was born due to drugs, and came out with terrible things. There are 4 grades of brain bleeds, and as a little bitty baby, he's already got the 3rd highest level when he was born. I think the department, if they look at their records, they will find that when the Shooks took them originally to the hospital, the doctor made no diagnosis of a brain bleed at the time. So it must have manifested itself sometime during the helicopter ride to Lubbock. And even then, I would purport to you, it's nobody's fault. This little child, once you have hydrocephalus, if you read and study about it, that's not an uncommon thing for hydrocephalus to cause brain bleeds. And it can be caused by air pressure in airplanes. It can be caused by just anything. And it just happens sometimes. And in fact, one of the doctors, the neurosurgeon in Lubbock, I couldn't get him to testify today, but he said it just happens. Sometimes it could be 3 months before, 5 months before, and they just manifest themselves. And to put this family that I represent through what they've been through after all the attention that they've given to children in the state of Texas that the department has asked them to take care of, and which they have and given back, and to do that and then take away the 2 children that they were taking care of for one of them 2.5 years. I mean, this is a tragedy. And if this is the way our department is analyzing things, then I strongly recommend the Senate committee that's undergoing the investigation into CPS right now to focus on this point, because it's not right to do this to people. And it's not right to these children that have been separated from the Shooks have been removed from their home longer than the Israeli children have been in Gaza. Granted, they're not in a tunnel, but it's no less hurtful to those children to be separated from the people that they know they love. And I would hope and pray that we're better than the Hamas people. These children should not be continued to be ripped away from these people who love and care for them. They have offered to take these children and adopt them and waive any benefit from the state. No medical, no money. They're not after this for the money or for anything. They love these children, and they're like their own born children. And I strongly recommend, they've had under 102.89, they've had Janine for more than a year. The sibling is a sibling, and the court has the authority to allow them to intervene. And I would suggest that the court, we have an opportunity here to clean this up to a large degree. I think the department should be removed. The Shooks be appointed the managing conservators of these children, and then be allowed to continue to try to go through the process, meet the requirements, and another judge or whoever it is to decide whether or not it's in the best interest of the child to adopt them. I know one thing, it is not in the best interest of the child or these children to have what's going on to continue. It's not right. That's not what we became lawyers for, and it's not any service. We should not be proud of this at all. I pass the witness.
And let me correct something I did that I'm sorry about. Cayenne, you're the CASA worker assigned to the case? No,
I'm the permanency specialist.
Okay, I'm sorry. Why did I think you were CASA? We don't have a CASA worker, do we?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thankfully, because I was going to say I did not give CASA an opportunity to weigh in. So good. I thought I made a mistake, and I didn't. Let me go ahead then, and Mr. Trout, pass it to you for your closing remarks.
Your Honor, in this case, the department is saddled with, and their main job is to take care of children and to make sure that their well-being is looked after. After this case started and investigations were done, it was unable to determine, based on difference of opinions from, as Mr. Hammaker said, doctors and other professionals. So in my client's eyes, the way that their best can care for children is to not place them in homes that they are unsure of. And I believe from Ms. Locker's testimony earlier on why they would close a home due to that, it seems to be the exact same reason, is you look at the best interest of the child, which is what my clients and Buckner both have as a responsibility. As far as giving PMC to the Shooks at this point, Mr. Hammaker has filed a motion that for conservatorship, today's hearing was not set for a final hearing to make that determination. It was set as a review hearing and a motion on whether placing the children back at this time. There's been no 45-day request and notice of a final hearing to make that decision, would be my argument to that. As far as I believe the court mentioned earlier, is not a fair party to this case that we're in today. I don't believe the court has the authority today to make a decision on her, since that case is not up for debate at this time right now. Mr. Hammaker and his clients have not met the timelines in order to intervene into that case right now. But my clients, we're looking at the unable to determine. Mr. Hammaker even said these type of injuries can manifest themselves in any type of way. They could be months from now, they could be weeks from now, days from now, until these type of things happen, which makes it another burden for my clients due to the unable to determine, because we have not been given a definitive answer through the investigation on when these injuries happen. In our decision to not place and not agree to place back into the home right now is based on that our responsibility is the best interest of the child. And if we cannot determine that that injury did or did not happen in that home, and due to the child's age, being almost 3 in January, I believe, that is a very vulnerable child, that, 3-year-olds aren't capable of protecting themselves. Some of them are nonverbal. Some of them don't communicate that well. So it is a decision of the best interest, because we're not exactly sure when the injuries happen and what all happened in that case. So it is not I know however it feels like it is not us slandering the Shooks or putting out that we don't trust them. It is that we have to look out for the children as our main point. And we are not able to do that with an unable to determine at this point. We're not saying they did it. We're not saying they didn't. Nobody knows, and nobody has said definitively at this point. And so we cannot agree to place the child back in the home. As far as, I believe you asked what the court could or could not do. Do I believe that the court in this case could make the decision to do that? I do believe you have that authority. As I said, we are not able to agree to it. Now, we would follow court orders, but we are not able to agree with Mr. Hammer to place the child back in the home at this time, based on what I've mentioned. Our responsibility is to the child, and with the unable to determine, we cannot definitively say that placing the child right now would be the best interest. Thank you.
Ms. Zavala, in addition to making any argument, I'd also be interested in your opinion as the ad litem as to the best interest of Janie.
Yes, Your Honor. I do want to address just a few things first. I know that this is a scary time for the Shooks, not knowing where the kids are. I want to be very clear that the kids are in a very loving, safe, appropriate respite home. I have no concerns over the safety of where they are. So I just want to make that very clear. Second, I do think it's very, very important that when any child is injured, that there is an investigation. I understand the need for that. I'm not questioning the department's investigation of the Ochoa child. I am a little frustrated in the back and forth and the kids coming back into the home and then leaving. But I do understand why that investigation needed to be performed. And because I don't have any outside knowledge of that child, I have to rely on that investigation. So we are now hearing that has been determined as unable to determine. So taking that from the investigation, but then I also look into my own experience with the home and the kids there. They have done, I haven't always been Janian's attorney, but in the time that I have been, he clearly is bonded to the home. I have had no concerns when I've visited in the home. I've visited the home on several different occasions, including for some other kids, including the sister. I've never had any concern. It's my understanding from what Buckner has said that they've never had any concerns in the home. And I think prior to this particular incident with the Ochoa child, I don't believe the Department or St. Francis has ever had any other concerns with this home. So when I look at the unable to determine, 2 doctors coming up with different evaluations and no other concerns, I really fall into the camp of putting the kids back with the Shooks. Now, I don't know how we do that logistically. I would, if I could wave a magic wand, I would love to see both kids back in the home and the Shooks to be able to adopt. But I do understand with the licensing issues that there may be some big hurdles to that. And we've got some other hurdles with little sister that we've got to figure out a different way. So do I think it's in Janian's interest to be back in the home that he's been in his whole entire life and that he's bonded to and that he's thrived in, yes. That would be my recommendation. Now, how we actually go about that to get permanency for Janian, whether at some point down the road, I do agree with Mr. Trout. I don't think we've got the appropriate 45 days notice in order to do a final hearing today. But if at some point down the road, we need to transfer over permanent managing conservatorship to the Shooks in order for that permanency to happen, that would definitely be something that I would want to look into as we get further down. And I do understand that at this time, this hearing is only addressing older brother. So that will require, at least for some amount of time, some separation of the siblings. I do know the respite home that they are in right now, and I think we can work out visitation, things like that. But I do believe the first step in getting both children home is getting Janian home. And that's what we have authority to do today.
Your Honor, I know I'm not a party, but I was wondering if I could add one fact so that, because it's another wrinkle to the case, Ms. Zavala, when she was discussing it, the children are in respite care. And because they're in respite care, there is a time limit that they can remain in respite. Ms. Locker can explain it better than I, but I believe we only have respite until December 17th. At that time, we are no longer able to keep them in respite any longer. And we got a variance based on a closure of the home, not to send them back to the Shooks. So at that point, I believe it's St. Francis would be the one that would make the determination of another agency to put them in another home. And so I hate to add another wrinkle to it, but you just when you start thinking about what this way forward is, that's an important piece, that we also have a limited time as well.
I appreciate that, because if I do take it under advisement, and I think I will, that lets me know I need to do something quick while we're still within that time period. So thank you, Richard. I appreciate that additional information. Stacy, you made mention in there about having conflicting reports from doctors. Is that something you've been told, or is that something you've actually had the opportunity to review?
I haven't reviewed the reports. I did speak with the investigator and understand that there were two separate doctors reviewing it, and that basically it's just they're unable to come to a definitive answer as to a time frame. And it sounds to me from speaking with the investigator that is a very difficult thing to come up with, a specific time frame for these types of injuries. I have not seen the reports myself.
Okay, because I was going to say, I'm just going to be honest. One of the things I'm frustrated with at the end of this hearing is I've heard nothing, not one iota of evidence to support the department's position in this case. And it seems real easy to me to say, oh, well, unable to determine, and not step out here and support that with any evidence at all. That strains credibility with this court. And so I was hoping that maybe you'd at least seen something that would reference some basis for this determination that's been made, that based on what I've heard today, can see has devastated the Shooks, has left them with a finding that's hanging over their head that, let's all be honest, is going to prevent them from doing the good works that they've done so far. With now I've heard numerous children. I'm reminded of Bum Phillips saying you need to dance with the one that brung you. Well, it seems like to me the Shooks have danced with the department and they've danced with Buckner, and now both want to just abandon them based on some report that I have no idea what it says, if it says anything. And I understand Buckner's hands may be tied by regulations or agreements or whatever, but it doesn't smell right. Doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth. Doesn't make me feel good about what's going on here. And I totally understand that the children's welfare is something everybody's concerned about, but you got to have this is a court of law. You got to have some kind of evidence to support a decision like that. And as I've said, I've heard nothing, absolutely not one single thing that gives me any inkling of what goes into the department's decision of unable to determine. And that's, I got to tell you, that's very, very frustrating to me. And I'm just a third party that had the opportunity to hear this today. I can't imagine how that affects the Shooks. And I can't imagine how being taken away from a family that you've spent 2.5 years of your entire life with, how that affects this little boy. And I know she's not under my purview today, but also how it affects Gracie and how it affects their older brother there in the home that's had a lifetime with them. And I think it's real easy. And in fact, I would say it's lazy to just throw up your hands and say, unable to determine. I mean, we got to be able to do better than that. We need some evidence. We need some facts. We need some argument. We need some, something to help this court and help the Shooks understand why you've upturned their lives and upturned the lives of these little kids. And I would suggest to you today, we haven't met that burden, and we sure haven't done justice to this situation. And I don't know if I have any authority, quite frankly, to do much about it today, other than to just give you what little my outsider looking in would say. But I mean, I think certainly the parties have some ability to right this wrong, and I would hope that they would continue to want to do that, just because sometimes you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And so and Bill, I haven't forgotten, I'm going to give you the last word, but while I'm digesting this, I would sure encourage y'all to continue talks about ways to, at least on a temporary basis, perhaps return the status quo to this case, while maybe brighter minds, Judge Baker or whoever it is given the opportunity to make some final determinations. But Bill, with that, I'll turn it over to you for your closing.
Your Honor, in the Panhandle of Texas, you are still a judge, and judges can do what they want to do. And I will tell you that the objections to 45-day notice and all of this are waived. I'm no board certified civil trial lawyer, but I know that if you have an objection of that type and you don't raise it prior to the starting of witnesses on the record, you waive it. So if those are even valid objections at some point in time, those objections have been waived to bring them up at the end of the trial. They're done. So I would purport that if we can't meet, we're willing to take these children, go through the system without any support from the state, and adopt them. And we have to prove to whoever the judge is in that case that they're good enough to adopt them. And we're willing to give that a shot. And if the department will not is not willing to reach that agreement with us, we ask that you order it. And unfortunately, the Shooks, even Daniel said, gave the ambiguities of the decision that was reached. That needs to be addressed. I think they should go back in and have these doctors bring some finality, because as we said here today, irregardless of these two children that have been removed, Shell and James Cook, with that finding, they can't go on a field trip with their little boy. They couldn't go to school to have school lunch with him. They couldn't work in a daycare. They can't do any of that with children. There's a huge impact from what this so-called investigation did to this family, not just, and this other child that they've already adopted, not just the two that have been pulled out. And these children need finality. And I will announce on the record on behalf of my clients that we will gladly take these children and be conservators of them and love them and treat them just like they were before they were taken away and try to adopt them. If the state will reach that agreement, that'll clean up this case. And if they don't want to do that, if, as you said, sometimes it's okay to just do what's right. In fact, the good Lord probably in James 1:7 would probably suggest that. And we just ask, I think the judge has got the power to do it. We ask you grant us leave. If you don't order them to release their conservatorship and award it to us, we would at least ask to be in the case. And I just hope we learn something from this.
Okay, well, let me, like I said, I'd like to have some calm reflection on what I've heard and make a good decision if I can. And but keeping in mind what Mr. Munoz has pointed out to me is my deadline. I'd hope to have that to you maybe by tomorrow afternoon. I've got my drug court in the morning, but I've got the afternoon free tomorrow, and I'd like to get this thing decided for y'all, or at least headed in a direction where you can at least make some decisions about what you need to do next. In the interim, if y'all can continue discussions, I certainly encourage that. And but I'll definitely try to have you guys something tomorrow. What I'd like to do is just do that by a letter decision, and so I'll have Rachel send that out to council. And Richard, could you give us a fax or email that we could send you a copy of that, please?
Absolutely. I could do that now, Your Honor. It would be ORG.
Perfect. I'll make sure you're included in that, so you'll have that. And Daniel and Stacy and Bill. And thank you, everybody, for sticking with us all day long. I appreciate it. And I will get something to you hopefully tomorrow afternoon. Yes, Daniel.
Judge, I apologize. So today was set for a review hearing also on top of the motions. And so what we've been dealing with today were the motions and the interventions. If we have minute, Ms. Cayenne Williams can give an update on how the children are doing so that we can get a review hearing in to stay in compliance with our case.
Yes, and I totally apologize for overlooking that. Let's go ahead and if y'all want to, you're welcome to stay. If not, anybody can be dismissed other than Stacy and Daniel and Cayenne. But yes, Ms. Williams, if you will, please just give us an update.
May I be excused?
You may. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we be excused as well, the Buckner folks?
You may. Thank you.
Thank you.
You ready for me?
There you go. Go right ahead.
As far as I know, the kids are doing really well. I just got this case when they were placed in a third respite home. So for the last 2 months, they've been doing well. They don't go to daycare. Both foster parents work from home, so they are at home all day. They have 2 other babies in the home, so they have plenty of entertainment. They're doing really well. We don't have any concerns. They eat good. They sleep good. They all get along well. They're continuing to reach their milestones. So nothing on my end.
Okay, thank you. And any questions, Stacy?
I have no questions, and I would agree. This is the home they are in is a great home. It's also a home that I've had other kids in that I'm very familiar with. So I've got no safety concerns about where they are now. It still doesn't change my recommendation that I think they should go home to the Shooks, but they are doing very well.
Let me ask you with regard to, and I'm sorry, it's easier for me to say Gracie too. So the little girl that we're referring to as Gracie, is there a separate case on Gracie?
There is, Your Honor. And as we've been working through this hearing, I've been thinking, and depending on whatever the ruling is in this case, I might file something in her case. I think we just have to figure out how to go about that.
I guess that's pending here in Judge Baker's jurisdiction.
It is, Your Honor. Just so you know, we did a termination hearing on that case in, I believe it was September, to where bio parents' rights were terminated in September. And so we are in the after final stages right now.
Okay, I see. Do you know when the next hearing's scheduled in?
I believe it's in 2 weeks, Your Honor.
Okay, so that's coming up pretty
Yes.
quick. So Stacy, if you wanted to take some action, maybe that gives you a window of opportunity. Okay, well, pending the court's ruling on the greater issues, based on Ms. Williams' update, I will at least temporarily continue the placement as appropriate and in the best interest of the children, and at least temporarily continue the conservatorship until further ruling of the court. And I do know, let's see, we do have a permanency hearing set for May the 23rd at 9 a.m. Okay, well, thank you guys. It's been a long day, and I appreciate everybody hanging in there with me, and I'll get something out to you by tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.